In this video, we're going to be taking a live look at my first few pictures with the Canon R5 Mark II. I also included some viewfinder footage of what it looks like live autofocusing on these beautiful animals. Hey, what's up guys? I'm KrisLuckPhoto, and what you just saw was some behind the scenes footage of me using the R5 Mark II in action. I just got the camera that day and I decided to test it out. Luckily, I ran into some bears and that's what the footage I got. I got some photos here in Lightroom that I want to share with you. So let's get into Lightroom and see what they look like. We shot between 2000 ISO, and then also last night I shot some photos. It was pretty dark out and they're 12,000 ISO. We'll test out the noise in those photos. We can test out the sharpness and make sure that the animal that it was supposedly tracking is sharp, because sometimes a camera may say it's focusing on something, but then it turns out it was missing the whole time. So we'll make sure everything is sharp. Let's get into Lightroom. I have a funny story about these photos right here. I'll tell you at the end of the video because it's pretty funny and I want to save the best of the video for last. So yeah, look at this. Completely oblivious. Anyway, let's scroll up to, this is the actual very first photo I took with it. This is a Kodiak brown bear. I do live in Kodiak, and luckily I shot this at 1/60th of a shutter speed. I just saw the bear and I was like, whatever the settings were, I shot, and then I adjusted in it after a second or so. But luckily this is rather sharp for 1/60th. I'm sure that's a little bit of motion blur there, especially if we zoom into extreme amounts. But that's something that would be cleaned up pretty easy within photo editing in Lightroom. So I'm very happy that the IBIS definitely works, but you could see if the animal's moving. Let me just show you a shot from 2 frames later, or maybe even the next frame. Animals moving, motion blur, motion blur, motion blur. That's not the camera fault, that's my fault. Should not have shot at 1/60th of a shutter speed, but that is when we figured out. I was like, oh, I'm not at 1,000th, 1/1250th. That's what I think I went to, 1/1250th, yep. And I was a lot more happier with the shutter speed there. So let's go to the first usable photo here, and this is my edit that I had on it. This is what it looked like raw, and we'll just zoom in, and the face is sharp, the eye is sharp, so that is good. Everything looks sharp, definitely a little bit on the darker side. So let's see my edit, and I'm really happy with that. If we zoom in again, you could see there is some definite noise, and there's some like green and purple fringing. I was using a Canon RF 600 f4 version 2, so that is the EF version 2. So this could be a lens issue, this could be a sensor issue, but you shouldn't be zooming in that far with whether you have a 2 megapixel camera or a 45 megapixel camera. I think it looks really good for what it is. If you are not happy with the noise in this camera, I'll show you how I handle it in Lightroom. It works perfect nearly 90% of the time. And if it doesn't work on this 12,800 photos, then I'd be surprised, because I have a feeling it's gonna work, and it's all done right in Lightroom. Okay, let's go over to this photo here. This bear obviously wasn't in the best light. This was later at night, and once the sun starts to set in Kodiak, it goes behind some mountains, and you pretty much lose light for the rest of the evening, unless the bear is in some certain peaks and valleys that allow some light to go through. This is the raw photo, by the way. If we come up and let's just raise the shadows and see what the dynamic range looks like. I mean, everything comes out really nice. Shadows raised really nice. ISO is still not bad, and this is 1600 ISO. So shadows do look good. How much can we bring the highlights down? It's hard because there's just sky behind him, and if there's sky, you don't really know what you're looking at when it comes to reducing the highlights. But it definitely looks like the highlights can be reduced a decent amount. Let's see if we recover anything. We do. There's like this little branch here, and if we reset the highlights, it's kind of gone. this is just one photo test of that. I really love this photo. I think it came out really, really nice. And I love the pose that the bear has. I love the angle that you get in the corner into the bear. I think it's a really well composed photo. I'm really happy that I got this one in particular. Let's continue down the line and try to find some darker images. This night wasn't too bad. For example, here's kind of what the photo ended up looking, and then after I crop a little bit, that's kind of what it looks like. So that's the raw with a crop, and that's a cropped final photo. So far, it definitely just seems like I'm shooting with the Canon R5 in terms of photo editing. There's really nothing I haven't seen that says this is a subpar camera. And just so you know, this is also just the initial test video. This is not a dedicated comparison video. This is just initial thoughts with the camera, and especially the tracking of the eyes and the animals and whatnot. So don't expect me to break down noise profiles between the R5 Mark II and the regular R5. I'm gonna set up some dedicated tests in a future video, and that will be more of the same. We'll have the same lens, same settings and everything. Then we'll be able to compare. I just wanted to show you guys some photos that I got last night and the night before. I thought this was cool. This bear and seagull were hanging out. And then one of the last photos that I edited, they're both kind of like, maybe it was this one. They're both looking into the abyss. So I really like how that photo came out. This was a bit darker. That's the raw photo, guys. So I turned from raw to this. It looks pretty good. Zooming in at 300%, which is a bit overkill. You can definitely see, once again, some kind of purple fringing and some green fringing, but I totally think it's usable. And these are some photos from last night. I haven't gotten a chance to look at them or edit them yet. The bears were definitely further away, so we'll be able to test some cropping. It was definitely really, really dark last night. It was pretty cloudy, and it was really, really last light of the night. So 12,000 ISO. I did choose 1/1250 as shutter speed because they were running in the water like you saw in the video. You know, it's not the best, it's not going to be the best photo, but it's a good test photo for the Canon R5 capabilities. This is about as low of a standard as I would shoot, and hopefully come out with a photo that can potentially be used on my website or in a calendar or whatnot. Not this one in particular, but this kind of lighting and everything. First, set a crop to where something I would actually be kind of using it for. So I'm gonna kind of level the horizon. Right here is about where I'd be. Do I want to see the shoreline in the crop or not? Here's what it looks like with the shoreline. Here's what it looks like without the shoreline. I kind of like it without the shoreline. So that's a pretty good crop. That's about as much crop as I like to comfortably do with the Canon R5 or the R5 Mark II with 45 megapixels. Don't get me wrong, I've definitely made photos where I've cropped it in like this before, but I'm trying to be realistic with my photo expectations here. And this is probably what I would keep it at for a photo I'd post, at least on Facebook. Now we could see, if we zoom in here, this is very noisy. I mean, this is 12,000 ISO on a 45 megapixel camera, just like the Canon R5. It's gonna look very similar, but is it sharp? Yes. The autofocus grabbed the bear, and it's definitely sharp. You can see the bear is in focus, the background is blurry. This is kind of out of focus here, and the bear is sharp. Let's show you how I handle these big 12,000 ISO, 45 megapixel pictures, and how we deal with it in Lightroom. So I'm just gonna edit this photo like it's my normal photo. If you don't see your Lightroom stuff, you can just press tab and they come back. So first thing I need to do is definitely bring up the brightness just a little bit, and definitely want to add some contrast. Warm it up just about to where I think it looks more natural. I'm really happy with that so far. Shadows, we don't really need to raise the shadows because it's dark. And if it's dark, it's dark. You don't need to make it look like it was shot at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a dark photo. It was a dark evening. And that's my editing philosophy. I wanted to make it a little better appealing to the eye, but we don't want to change the time of day. Accept the photo that you took at the time you took it. And I like the contrast where it's at so far. Maybe we could just add a little bit more by adjusting some whites and blacks. But I like where the highlights are in the water. And what I like to do sometimes is just test out what it looks like in the water if I reduce the dehaze. You don't really want to increase it for this photo. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to do a little bit of clarity, and I think that looks good for the most part. And sometimes I'll just add a little bit of a color change in the color grading tab. But I'm just going to keep it pretty simple. This is just like a, there's before, there's after so far. Here's where the magic comes in. I'm not a editing expert. Most of my photos, I definitely like to keep the sharpening between 50 and 60. We'll just do 50 here. And right under that, you'll have the AI noise reduction in Adobe Lightroom. How I like to handle this is I'll press this. It'll take a second to load up. I like to make the amount 48 for these kind of photos. Whether it's the aurora at nighttime or bears or wildlife, I feel like 48 is the magic number. It's not going to be overkill, and it's going to look pretty good. Already, it looks pretty good in terms of the noise profile in the photo. Let's hit enhance and see how it looks. Here is the new profile. Here is the original here. So that is completely like grained out. Obviously, there's no doubt about it. With this photo, it didn't work that great because it's just far. It's just a tough photo. Like, does it look better? Honestly, a little bit when you zoom out. If you're going to zoom in, keep in mind, this is where we were, by the way, guys. Let's reset the crop real quick. I mean, why are we expecting anything less than this? So that's just an example so far. Maybe I'll leave the shoreline in here, as I do kind of like to tell the story where I was without really saying where I was. So that will probably be the final photo. If you zoom in, it's not perfect, but this was 12,000 ISO late at night. Let's see what time I shot this. It was shot at 8:47 p.m. So definitely dark and a cloudy day, obviously. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the R5 Mark II. I'm not going to say that it's 1,000 times better than the R5 Mark I. It's fairly similar when it comes to editing the photo on Lightroom. If someone said, here, edit these two photos side by side, but I'm not going to tell you which camera it was shot on, probably not going to notice. Really, it comes down to lenses when it comes to photo editing and everything. But I figured I'd just give you guys a real world example of a real situation and not something just done here in my office where I controlled everything. This is uncontrolled, real life nature, and I'm happy with it. Hopefully this video gave you some insight to how the R5 Mark II shoots. I will be uploading a pretty cool video next. I shot some 8K 60 RAW in C-Log 2, and that's going to be my next video. I'm going to show you how I edit that and how it looks on the computer, how does Adobe Premiere Pro run it. It's going to be a pretty good video for you guys to learn from, and maybe be inspired to shoot some 8K here in the near future. So I did promise you guys this story behind these photos. If I can find them here. This group of people, excluding this guy, are paying this lady right here on the end real money to come out to Kodiak and find bears and shoot them and get these kind of photographs. Well, this bear walked just to the left of where this photo is, and these people thought that this bear kept walking down the river, but it just stopped and it stood there, and these people walked right past them. The funny thing is, this guy was walking in front of everyone else, and this lady that runs the show, if you know what I'm trying to say, is yelling at him, "You better get back away from that bear, you don't know anything." And then this guy goes, lady, I know so much more about bears than you'll ever have in your life, and blah, blah, blah. It was pretty funny, I'm not gonna lie. Meanwhile, they're all walking past this bear, photographing a helicopter that was coming in. This bear starts to put on a show. The bear's looking at them like, yeah, you guys are pretty stupid. Bear's looking at me like, what's going on here? And then the bear's just doing his thing. I get these awesome, awesome shots. Like, I mean, that photo comes while these people are photographing a helicopter. They missed out pretty big. That guy started walking back, doesn't see the bear right there, right? Photo, bear. Let me unfavorite some, and we'll zoom out or start from the scratch. He doesn't see the bear at all. The bear's looking at him like, wow, you're not too bright. I'll just leave you alone, though, because you need what's left of your brain. And this guy's walking. He comes back, and I say to him, I said, hey, do you know where that bear went? And he goes, oh, I was looking for it way out there, and then I saw the helicopter. I don't know where the bear went. And I showed him the photo, and the guy was stunned that he walked right past it. So, moral of the story, pay attention. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to know how I set up the Canon R5 Mark II to be a hybrid shooter to shoot from photos to videos seamlessly, click this video right here. That's all I got. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.